Hello all, Marty T Hawkins with Warehousing Operations as a Career, the podcast. I want to thank you for clicking in to another episode. This just happens to be our 300th time to visit and talk about the industry that I love, and I guess you could say I'm quite passionate about it. We've entertained many guests over the years: order selectors, driver helpers, forklift operators, pallet runners, over-the-road truck drivers, warehouse leads, supervisors, managers, staffing agency owners, CSHOs, and OSHA outreach trainers. Recruiters, human resource managers, and we've had many roundtable discussions regarding our chosen industries, whether they be in manufacturing, production, or the distribution arenas. Gosh, the range of topics could go on and on now that I'm thinking about it. If you've ever taken away any thoughts from us here at WAOC, I hope it's that our jobs and careers is a long-term commitment. We're going to work for the rest of our lives with that objective of eventually walking away financially secure, propping our feet up on the front porch with a cold beverage in our hands, maybe with our better halves and the kids and grandkids kind of hanging out with us. You've heard me talk a lot about the importance of planning, goals, things to do and things not to do in the workplace, probably too often and too many times. Those topics are on my mind today, but I'm going to try and steer away from them. Well, I may explore just the edges a bit, I guess. Anyway, it's been a strange few months for WAOC. I've been doing a little traveling for business and working here in Dallas, Texas, visiting with applicants, recruiters, and what I most enjoy, speaking with the backbone of our industry, the men and women on the floor, those performing the many different positions that are out there. A subject that's came up across 3 different states recently is workplace violence. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole class on avoiding violence and its consequences. I mean, it's pretty much common sense, or you'd think so. Are you seeing more aggravation or frustration at your facilities? Each recent occurrence I've heard about lately have been between individuals with less than 6 weeks on the job. 2 gentlemen got into a fist fight over water being splashed onto them. It seems things escalated from, simple horseplay with water bottles into one of the guys throwing a punch and the other, of course, reciprocating. As we all know, horseplay in the warehouse is never going to end well. We're at work, not a social event or a backyard barbecue. Another instance involved 3 men getting into a fight in a parking lot at break. All 3 lost their jobs, of course. Oh, and here's a good one. Seems that 2 women, packers that worked across from each other for, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks, just all of a sudden, as the story goes, just started pushing each other around, ending up on the ground wrestling. Again, both of them lost their jobs. Now, this is something that was kind of interesting. Each investigation concluded that these spats grew to the breaking points over a few days or weeks. While conducting the investigations, it was learned that others had seen and heard, things like bickering between them. In one instance, even threats were made. When asked why they hadn't said anything, it was brought up that they didn't want to get involved, didn't want to snitch or get anyone in trouble. These people were their friends. People lost their jobs over silly comments. I'm not sure that that's the way to help our friends out, if we're thinking like that. Each one of those ladies and gentlemen could have been charged with assault, and I think this is really important. A lot of times we don't really think about it. An assault charge stays with you for life. Now, I know you may have been told that it's a misdemeanor most of the time and that misdemeanors only stay on your record for 3 years. Your hiring manager knows about it for always. Have you ever been job searching and seen comments like background friendly or BGF or something about second chances on job boards or job groups? Please think long term here. Work hard to get along with your peers. It's our lives that we could derail. It's not going to be the ones that's upsetting us. And I want to throw this out there. Now, I don't necessarily agree with infractions, growing up, carrying so much weight within our careers. And companies may state that they don't, but they can and do in many instances. DWIs, DUIs, different drug charges, theft, that's another important one, and any kind of assault or domestic violence charges are looked at. Now, they can't necessarily keep us from getting the job, but if there's 30 other applicants with clean records and the same or more experience with within that task that we're applying for, well, you can see how that could turn out for us, right? Let me look at my notes here. Another thing that I'm hearing more and more about recently is the words, "it's not fair." There is nothing fair about working. We accept a job, know the task at hand, or hopefully we've asked about the job if it wasn't explained to us before we accepted it. We can't be concerned about what others, especially in other departments, are doing. Now, I'm not talking about being mistreated, by a supervisor or being picked on by a manager. That is something different and should be reported immediately to our HR or even higher up the chain if necessary. And it's important to remember that it is our responsibility to report it for ourselves and others. Can't read my own writing. I wrote something here. Here's a good example that I heard just a few weeks ago. An individual, I think it was only like his third job to apply for, replied when asked why he had left company A. He stated that he couldn't get along with his supervisor, so he just didn't go back in one day. The interviewer then asked about his stay with Company B. The applicant stated that his manager wanted him to work, much harder than he was. Well, as you can imagine, the interview never got to the third question. We've talked about how hard an interview is to complete. We're nervous to begin with, and yes, we should be, and we have to be honest when answering every question. But we should think about how direct we can answer those questions sometimes. Oh, here's a good example. We should try not to be that new associate that knows more about doing the job than the supervisor and manager that's been there for 7 years. An order selector, I think it was his fourth week, it was his third or fourth week, after being trained was ready to be turned loose on his own. He'd done really good, did a great job all throughout his training, following direction and learning the company's SOPs and selection procedures. He knew what the expectations were. Well, on the first night being left on his own, the trainer noticed he was doing things a little differently than that, he'd been shown. When spoken to about it, he stated that this was how he used to do it at his last job, the one that he's no longer with. A while later, into the shift, the supervisor witnessed him performing the task incorrectly and spoke with him about it. He received roughly the same answer. Well, the supervisor asked him if his trainer had explained their way of selecting and had he signed off on his expectation sheet. The associate said yes, but that he felt that his way was better. It was quicker for him. As you can imagine, the gentleman was walked out at the end of the day. It's important that we pick our battles as new associates. The company has rules and standard operating procedures for a reason, and most of the time we will not be privy as to how they came up with them or how they came to be. Now, I do feel that it's always okay to bring up our ideas. We may have a better way of doing something, but we should perform the task as asked until we have those discussions with management. I've digressed a little bit here. I got to get back on my bullet points. Where was I? Okay, one thing I wanted to point out is job hopping. Many times we can increase our pay rate each time that we change positions, and that shouldn't be a bad thing at all. However, when a hiring agent sees we've had like 5 jobs at different companies in 6 or 7 years, they don't know that we improved or felt like that we had improved our career with each hop. Always make sure, even with such a positive move, that number 1, we explain why we changed jobs, and number 2, that we're looking for a permanent, long-term career and position with a company, that's built on growth. And that growth coming from within. I know one manager that doesn't ask questions when they see such. It's just on to the next resume. Like we've discussed before, during an interview, we have to be selling ourselves in order to get the job. I won't go into a full-blown soapbox speech about planning, but do you have a plan? Here in the States, we like to think we'll be retiring around 65 or 67 years young. In today's world, it's necessary to start planning for that retirement in our 20s and really no later than our 30s. Our chosen professions in the light industrial areas can provide great resources for growth, financial resources, and a great livelihood. However, it's our responsibility to take advantage of those many opportunities. Savings are important. Investing or taking advantage of things like the company's 401k offerings and understanding them is really important. Does everyone understand how your Social Security works? Know what the qualifiers are and how we can mess it up if we're not careful? And how about any other financial plans our company may offer? It's not a long time between 30 years old and 67 years old. Think about it all. You're in a long-term endeavor here, and it's a great and rewarding ride if we apply ourselves and commit to it. A career is just really common sense, and you've heard me say that 1,000 times. We all know the difference between right and wrong. Oh, and here's one thing I want to throw out there. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a roundtable episode with a recruiter, an HR representative, an operations trainer, and a VP on the show, each explaining their thoughts on the industry and where they believe it's going. It'll be a blast speaking to each of them. I really hope you're able to attend that episode. And as always, if you have any questions about today's topics, send us an email to host@warehouseandoperationsasacareer.com and we'll get those answers for you. Thanks for listening in and being a part of our 300th episode. We look forward to many more and hope each of you enjoy them as much as we do.